Good afternoon. I'd like to call the Rules and City Government Committee meeting to order. Please, for the record, note that Alderman Arnett and Alderman Schnellmeyer are present. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda with an amendment or a reorganizing, really. I'd like to move O-2025 to the top of the agenda for this meeting.
I will second. I'll move.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded properly. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I'll next accept an approval of the minutes from the June 6th meeting.
Second. How we do things now.
Okay, I'm just making this suggestion and you guys follow. Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, takes us on to legislation. O-2025, sale of city-owned property at 932 Spa Road and 935 Spa Road, Lot 1. And I see we have Ms. Leonard, our Assistant City Attorney, and Mr. Dinner, who is our Central Services Director, and Mr. Chris Jakubiak, who is our Director of Planning and Zoning. And then we have Mr. Lyles, who is our City Attorney. And we have Ms. Maddox Evans, who is the Executive Director of the Housing Authority. So we have many of the experts in the room who can help us get through this. For the record, I will say that this legislation has not gone to public hearing. That will be on Monday. Hopefully, the committee will hear enough information today to be able to take a position on it. If not, then it will have to come back to committee again. So let's see if we can get through this and get it all done today. So who'd like to begin? Colleagues, would you like to ask questions of any of the experts who are here with us? Or I know yesterday, hearing this in economic or environmental matters, we had a lot of questions, especially as it relates to the legal components of it. So Alderman Arnett, would you like to start with the question?
Yeah, be happy to. On page 2 of the ordinance, starting in the now therefore, there are a list of 6 conditions that the sale is subject to. Most of them are fairly pro forma. We had some confusion about what are lots 1 and lots 2. We finally got a map, which I think is the most current map. It does not tell us on the map that what is the ballpark? The ball fields are not part of this. So the map shows
Weems-Whalen.
Weems-Whalen. So it shows things divided into lot 1 and lot 2.
You all seen this?
Both?
I mean, I've seen various different versions. I don't
Right.
know
Let me
that
just
one
share
specifically.
Both of those seem to be on the east side of Spa Road, but I think the sale has to do with the west side of Spa Road also, but we're not sure. So
Yes, it does. So it's a little bit of background on this is that when the city first acquired a lot of this property, it was all one big parcel and there was no road through it. When the road went through, it was never subdivided. Separate tax ID numbers were not given to the parcels on one side versus the other. So that's what's causing, and we are going to clear that all up as we go through the subdivision process and the deed. But it's just one of those, and I've already been talking with SDAT to get it done, but they need to see a deed in order to be able to assign new tax ID numbers. So that's part of the confusion, is that it used to be all one big piece and then they drove a road through it and then they didn't really follow up with the paperwork behind it. So we are planning to, so it's just on the Weems-Whalen side, it would just be lot 1. Lot 2 is being, and jump in if I'm getting this wrong, Lot 2, we're keeping. Lot 1 would go. And then all of the stuff on the other side, which is actually two sort of, it's one small parcel plus a parcel that's still connected across the road, are going to go as well. If that,
So unfortunately, I'm now more confused than ever. If you look at
Yeah.
the map that you have, Lot 2 seems to be on the right-hand side of the map. At least that's where Lot 2 shows up. And
Yes.
Lot 1,
Lot 1 is also, should also be, here's the road, right? So Lot 1 is still on the same side. We're also talking about this piece over here, right? Yes. Yeah, so can I come up?
Please.
yeah,
Yeah, this took me a while to. The tax record. So here's the road.
right,
Lot 1 and Lot 2 both.
right.
This we're keeping. This we're going to give, and then we're also going to do. Over.
So that's not mentioned in the legislation.
That is, no, it is. One. That's the 935. One is 935. There's two different.
Mhm. So this is 932.
I believe this is. And this is 935.
Okay, so this is 9.
And so this is the ball field over here.
Yeah.
All right.
And so this is all 9 subdivided. Have to break this out into tax. And then this piece here. So we're gonna have to break that out too. But it's an operating two.
So
So-
procedurally, I'm not sure I'm still clear, but shouldn't that be done before we do the ordinance?
The tax SStat will not reassign new numbers until you have it in place. The problem is this one. So this piece down here does have it. This piece they will not give it tax number. Get a key that parcels it out here. We're doing that as part of the subdivision. So it's
So yesterday, this is partial
Kaylin,
to
can you
a
have them
number
put
of-
this up? They should have this from yesterday.
number of questions we had about the cart coming before the horse. It seems like before we refer to these things, those lot subdivisions should be accomplished.
ideally that would be the case. However, if we want to get applications in for brownfield money, that is due in October. So we're kind of trying to do it on parallel paths, or we will miss potentially the boat completely, so to speak.
And is that the only boat?
There's not many boats for massive environmental remediation of sites like this. I would say there's not that many.
Right. So then another question that came up is in state law, as I understand it, and the city code, if we're surplusing property, we need to get 2 property value assessments done, appraisals done. And we were told yesterday by Mr. Vogel, those have been asked for and we might get them in October or November.
I know they've been asked for. I don't know if there's. It's kind of a strange sale because we're not selling it per se to a private owner to do a private use with. We're selling it to a quasi-governmental group to hold for the express purpose of doing remediation only and no other activities.
All right, so that leads to another question that came up. Why are they holding it for 7 years? Because yesterday we were told it was remediation and redevelopment.
The Resilience Authority, at least all the paperwork worked on, they will not be doing any part of the development. They are just doing the remediation, but that could take, with all the paperwork that is required related to this type of funding, could take up to 7 years, plus or minus, depending. But the Resilience Authority is only doing and is only agreeing to do remediation work. They are not agreeing to being a developer or to do the development.
So can development occur before the remediation?
That would depend on how the process goes with the state and federal funding. Depending on how fast the project moves and how fast we can get paperwork cleared with them, it could be faster, but it could be less. It could be more. It's hard to tell because until you start going into these remediation projects, you don't know how much is going to be required.
So there's a lot that seems to be in plan that is not in this legislation. So yesterday, again, it was said that the redevelopment is going to be for the Choice Neighborhood Initiative program. But that's not mentioned in the legislation at all. And I know that some older persons want to reserve part of this parcel on lot 1 on the other side for development of another sort, development of city office space and so forth. But this doesn't speak to, this legislation doesn't encompass this. We were told, though, that redevelopment for the Choice Neighborhood Initiative would be done. And so then I asked, well, if the land reverts back to the city in 7 years, does that mean that the city owns the property that Housing Authority buildings would be on? And if that, does that ownership come with any obligations to the maintenance or development or anything else having to do with buildings on our property? I was told that the property would be leased to the Housing Authority by virtue of a ground rent, but we have none of those details in this legislation. So it feels like this has not really followed proper property surplus. The 7-year length was really not explained. Could be 7 years, could be less. What happens if it's less? What happens if the remediation is $10 million, not $4 million, which we were told is the likely grant amount? Who picks up the rest of the remediation? Is that the city? And how does that square with the as-is condition in number 5 in here? I mean, it just seems to me like there's a lot more going on than this ordinance covers. And it feels like we're committing to a number of things implicitly that are not explicitly in this ordinance.
I mean, from my perspective, the ordinances need to be limited to what they're actually accomplishing. In this case, it's a sale. All of the other things you mentioned would have to be accomplished with other legal documents that you, from a legal perspective, I'm not sure you want to lump in the sale of the property with a lease, with a development agreement. I feel like those all need to be separate ordinances and separate documents. And this is just sort of step 1 in what is clearly a multi-phase project.
Well, let me ask, if this legislation is only dealing with the remediation, giving the Resilience Authority the ability to get the funds to clean up the property,
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't we eliminate any references to development? And I was trying to find on page 2 where it speaks to infrastructure projects, environmental initiatives.
I mean,
that
I think you're welcome to tweak that language. That language was just sort of explaining why the Resilience Authority has the authority under its operating documents to take this property. It wasn't meant to delve into the whole deal with the choice neighborhoods. It was more just saying the Resilience Authority is allowed to take ownership of property for these reasons, and it was listing those reasons.
So would it clarify things if we made it clearer that this is the function of the Resilience Authority, without it being defined as the purpose.
If you feel like that would help, I'm not wed to those whereas clauses, so you are welcome to suggest amendments.
Yeah, because there's nothing in here that says, and it is interesting, we're using the word transfer, which I'd like to explore rather than sale, is exclusively for the purposes of getting remediation done. But further, we do not know what the cost of remediation is at this point. So, and we're told that that's coming again in the fall, which
Well,
sounds to me like the right time to do this legislation.
From that perspective, even with the transfer of ownership, the city as the source cause of the environmental issues, even if we transfer it, we're not off the hook. Remediation costs will always sit with the city because we are the entity that owned the property when the issues caused. So whether the remediation is $4 or $10 million from a legal liability standpoint, we were the property owner when it happened. Transferring the property does not get us off the hook for those costs.
So that point was made yesterday. Mr. Vogel, it's better to have $4 million against a potential $10 million than to not have $4 million. I kind of hard to agree. Do agree with that logic.
The way environmental laws work is that if you are the owner when the issue occurs, even if you sell it, you remain liable. You cannot pass on that responsibility. That's the way the federal and state laws are set up. That responsibility rests with you to resolve, and that you cannot kick it down stream to the next buyers. Now, if the next buyer is willing to help contribute, that's acceptable, but it's still the primary responsibility stays with that original property owner. So again, regardless of how much it costs and regardless of who technically owns the property, liability for the remediation stays with the city.
So for me, and following Alderwoman Finlayson's line of argument, it does seem to needs to be in here explicitly that this transfer, and again, I want to know why it can't be a transfer, refers only to remediation, nothing else. Because yesterday we had a lot, in fact, that's why we want Ms. Evans-Maddox here. There was a lot of discussion about development and the C&I program, which isn't mentioned here at all. What is that?
Vote a second.
Sounds like a radio.
But one of the things that yesterday's committee, and I assume this committee wants to know too, is from the Housing Authority, if it takes 7 years to remediate, what does that do to the C&I plan? Because I think that's in development now.
I can't speak to that piece. And the reality is the first step is if we want to be able to use the property for any purpose, we're going to have to remediate. And I'll let Director Vogel speak to it.
Director Burr-Vogel, Director of Public Works. Keep in mind that the 7 years is just the maximum length of the grant. So let's say that so we wanted to give ourselves the maximum flexibility. We wanted a reverter clause that makes sure the property comes back to us. I think the sale agreement itself says 7 years or when remediation is complete, whichever is sooner. Is that correct? Yeah. So it's up to 7 years. And the reason it could take that long is that some of the remediation activity could occur at the same time as construction. This is just hypothetical. And then the Resilience Authority would be able to pay for some of those costs, or either concurrent with or just immediately prior to some construction activity. So if there's a building, let's say it's a city office building, and some remediation needed to occur in advance of us doing some site work, installing utilities or a foundation at that time, maybe that happens 5 years from now, that funding would be available to us because the property would still be technically owned by the Resilience Authority at the time of that remediation activity. So again, I'm sorry, I'm going to repeat myself a little bit from yesterday. This is purely a a legal instrument to allow us access to funding, so that we do not have to be responsible for paying for all of this cleanup ourselves. In my view, it relinquishes none of the city's options in terms of how the site is developed in the future, what remediation activity is or is not taken, and the Resilience Authority is simply a partner helping us access these federal funds.
Well, I think it would help if we could clarify, and as I said previously, to take out any references to development, to what's going to happen once the remediation is completed. So maybe there should be an amendment from the committee that eliminates any reference to projects or development or anything that speaks to anything other than remediation. I'm hearing 7 years. I'm hearing up to. It doesn't say up to in the legislation. It says 7 years. So that could be an amendment. I think that's on page 2, line 24, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
We can change that to up to 7 years. But there's a question. I apologize to Alderman Schnellmeyer because I should have called on you previously. The question about why sale and not transfer. That makes me very uncomfortable. So could you tell us, Ms. Leonard, why we're selling it to them in reference, we expect something to get in return when you're selling something. And they sell it back to us in almost 7 years, or why sale and not transfer?
I'm not sure there was a specific reason for that.
Mr. Lyles, City Attorney.
Hi,
Please.
Mike Lyles, City Attorney. Because they're two distinct organizations, corporations under Maryland law, and it's an arm's length transaction, so it will likely be a sale for $1 or something nominal, so that they can take ownership.
This doesn't speak to any amount for that sale.
What does, line 30,
Line
30,
for the price of has zero here.
right.
It's not going to say zero when we amend it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It says zero. It should say $1.
Okay, so we're selling it to them for $1, which is not in the.
That's a typo. We'll change that. That's my fault. Thank you.
And in 7 years, what's the return? Is there a return?
Well, there will be if the council decides to move forward with whatever projects the council wants to on the property after it's been remediated.
No,
But is there a
I'm not
resale
sure
price?
you're answering. Here, my question is, we're selling it to them for $1. Okay,
They,
and then
they would sell it back to us for $1.
in 7 years we get
Yes.
it back for the same $1.
Correct.
Plus remediation
Yeah,
will
plus
have
the
occurred,
remediation.
costing millions of dollars that we may not have to pay all of, given the grants that might be received in order to assist with the remediation.
So if we don't get the $4 million for remediation that's sought in this grant this fall,
Which we don't have any information.
which we have no information on,
It would be through the Brownfields program, is what it is.
through the what?
Brownfields program.
Which means what?
It's a special program that's run to deal with sites like this that have significant environmental issues.
So we don't really know what it will cost us to get this back, is what I'm hearing.
No, they will sell it back to us for $1 with whatever that was able to be accomplished.
Where's that in the ordinance?
Well, I think you're getting ahead of the situation. Given that it's an arm's length transaction, we don't want to indicate that it's not an arm's length transaction, because it is. And so we have to proceed as though they can do what they want to do with it, although we are part of the Resiliency Authority with Anne Arundel County, and there is a plan for the Resilience Authority to do certain things that will assist the citizens of the city and Anne Arundel County.
Well, we're 1/3 of the Resilience Authority. There's 6 members from the county and 3 from the city, so we don't have a majority.
Well, I wouldn't look at it like 1/3. We are a partner in the Resilience Authority, and so the aims of the Resilience Authority are to meet the needs of the citizens of the county and the city.
But we don't have, and this was a concern we raised when we created the Resilience Authority, we don't have the majority, and therefore we don't have a control on this body. So we're giving them our property so that they can raise funds to remediate it. When it's time to get the property back for $1 plus what I just heard was the cost of remediation.
No,
Or
we
what,
wouldn't.
what was not raised in funds.
We do have an outside working document with the Resilience Authority to do these projects, which would also trigger this. So we, in addition to this deed, we have a working, living, breathing document, legal document with the Resilience Authority in which we partner with them on a regular basis for projects. This happens to be one of our bigger projects, but we do this regularly where we partner with them. We document it as what's called a project task order to this bigger master agreement. And we would, and you know, so it's not like we're giving it to them with no document, you know, that we're maintaining a partnership, a working, living, breathing partnership with them. So we're giving it to them, but it's not as though we're giving it to this third party that we don't have any other relationship with. We have a working relationship with this group on a regular basis for all sorts of projects of different sizes.
So why are we going through this if we've done this before?
Because in order to get the funding, the very big funding, the city cannot hold ownership. That's what it comes down to. If we hold ownership to the property, we exclude ourselves from huge pots of money that could help remediate it.
Okay, I understand that. But why are we treating this one differently than other projects where the Resilience Authority
Other
has?
projects haven't required the same amount of funding level. The other projects are smaller projects. They don't require this type of funding, or you can get funding from different pots. For this specific type of project and the type of funding we need, we will not be able to get the grants we need to do it any other way.
Okay, so the city has to be removed from
Correct.
the ownership of this property.
And this is done, I mean, I haven't done one in a while, but I have done them before. This is a sort of a standard process by where a government needs to get property remediated. They work with a third party like the Resilience Authority to help get these grants. This is not an uncommon scenario.
Okay,
I have lots of questions, but I think
I'm going to ask
let Mr.
Alderman Chandler-Meyer.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question kind of got pushed back in the relevancy after a lot of back and forth, but in regards to going back to the lot splitting and what needs to go first, et cetera, before we actually do the sale, I do think we're covered on that front on page 2, line 15, starting at that point where it says the approval of the sale is contingent upon the city's completion of the subdivision, etc. So we basically the entire contract's moot unless we take care of that. So I understand we're covered legally unless we get that done. So that protects us while we do this 2 parallel thing, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, great. And I do understand the sense of urgency here because there aren't a lot of opportunities for these types of grants, and my understanding with I'll politely call them headwinds from the feds, these opportunities are going to shrink more and more in the future. I am getting nods from our public works director. So we do have a sense of urgency here. And I just want to caution against trying to have perfect be the enemy of great. This does seem like a really great deal that we have before us. I understand wanting to iron out a couple little kinks here and there that we may see in front of us, but if we try to line up, well, we want it exactly perfect and go here, and we're not going to consider this until later, until we have every single thing lined up in a row and perfect how we want it, we could just miss this boat. And if that happens, we could miss out on a very essential part of CNI.
Your question?
I had a question that was answered regarding the lot splitting and the contingency, and then I had a spiel that I went on. Although I believe our Director Vogel has a comment on that.
I just want to add to what you said. You're absolutely correct. It's not just that it's not these general headwinds. This program absolutely is expiring. It is not going to receive the level of funding going forward. So this is our last shot. When the Brownfields grant that we're applying for in November, we will not have an opportunity in the future until a potential future administration changes things. So that you're absolutely right. This is our one shot, and that is exactly the reason we are going forward with this right now. Is because the sale needs to happen. Then we need to put a lot of effort into the grant application. And so if the sale is not going to happen for some reason, we wouldn't want to spend that money. There's a consultant that's going to help us put together all of the detailed information for the grant application. So that's the reason we're going forward now. And it is essential, if we want access to these funds, that we complete this legislation, complete the sale in September. Thank you.
Well, I feel compelled to say that we have no interest in stopping this. We do understand the political environment that we are in now, and we know what's potentially in the future. So let's be very clear that our interest in clarifying this has nothing to do with stopping it, but rather getting it right and giving us a level of comfort so that at the end of this process, we'll be where we want to be. And that will be with complete remediation of the properties and the ability to move forward however the next council feels they would like to move forward. So let's be very clear about that right from the start. And I think I feel comfortable speaking for my colleagues. We don't want to stop this, but we do want to get it right. And this legislation has some issues that we need addressed. So please help us address those issues so we can move it forward. Let's get the language correct. And I should say, let's get the language to a point where we're comfortable with it so that we can make those amendments and we can introduce those amendments on Monday night from the committee when this goes to public hearing. And hopefully we can move forward. Okay? But, obstacles don't help. So now what I'm hearing is if we take out language that references a subdivision.
There isn't any in there, I think.
Well, there is on
Subdivision
page,
of a lot.
Yeah, I know you wanted to take out development language. I would leave in the condition about the subdivision because we do want the subdivision to go through before the deed sort of takes effect. So we don't want to take that piece out.
Alderman Shannemeyer, I think you referenced the subdivision. Where
Yes, Madam
are we?
Chair,
What
there's
page in line.
two portions that reference subdivision in the legislation. They're both on page 2. The first is line 15. It's that paragraph 1 on line 15, and then paragraph 2 on line 18. Both on page 2.
Thank you. Let's deal with 15, line 15. Ms. Leonard, are you seeing that?
Yes. Yeah, so we do want the approval of the sale to be contingent upon the subdivision because we don't want to sell lot 2, so we need to finish the subdivision, so we're just giving them lot 1. So that is important to keep.
So that doesn't tie us to a subdivision.
No, it does because it still has to go through the normal city subdivision process, just like any other subdivision would have to go through.
Okay. And then there's another reference, did you say 18? I see it in line
Yeah,
18.
we're responsible for the costs of the subdivision because it's our property. We're the ones subdividing it.
Okay. So are they the only references?
I believe so. There are other uses of the words of development or similar throughout, which I'm fine with those being modified. I do think the first and second conditions about subdivision need to stay in just so that we know we're running this on a parallel track with the subdivision.
The word develop does not appear in the legislation
I
at all.
don't see it either.
Okay. So we have to leave in, or we should, by advice of council, leave it in both lines 15 and lines 18 on page 2. I'm hearing.
Well,
So
it starts really at line 11. But the specific is in line 16, it says we're going to subdivide into 2 lots. Only lot 1 is the subject of this ordinance. So that's this area over here that bounds Spa Road, I'm assuming.
Correct. Yes.
And lot 1 crosses Spa Road.
Right.
So it's a piece on the east side and a piece on the west side.
Correct.
And we have this map, that same map we
Yeah,
got
so
yesterday, which was not.
That's where, so there is the bottom left section across Spa Road is clearly, I think, 932, and it has its own tax ID number. But the top portion doesn't have its own tax ID number. Now, it's never gone as 935. It's gone as 932 Spa Road, but it has the same tax ID as Lot 1 across the street. But we can't, I talked directly with SDET, Maryland State Department of Assessments and Taxations. We can't clear up the tax ID issue until we get a deed. They need to see a deed that removes that little piece on the top from the piece across the street, and then they will issue us a new tax ID number for that piece.
And did you say that was in progress?
That will be done through the subdivision.
So that can't be done until the subdivision.
Yeah, the subdivision has to go through, then you can parcel off those pieces, and then you can submit that to SDAT to get new tax ID numbers.
Are you saying? Yeah. Okay. Alderman Schnellmeyer?
Thank you. And I may be putting a cart ahead of a horse here, and if I am, you can say that. How complicated is the subdivision process? Does that require legislation? Is that something that can be done internally through the law office or through planning and zoning?
I mean, I'm involved, but it's going through, there's someone in Public Works who's working on it actively with planning and zoning to get the subdivision. So it's a multi-departmental.
But it does
effort.
not require legislation on our part?
No, it does not. Subdivision generally doesn't require city council approval or involvement, and subdividing our own property. That's the reason this deed has to be contingent on subdivision, because we need to subdivide it while we own it first and then transfer.
Is there any law or regulation currently on the code that would delay that?
You mean on the subdivision process?
Yes.
Not that I'm aware of. I meet every couple of weeks with representatives from both Department of Public Works and Planning and Zoning to keep on tabs on the subdivision process, and they have not alerted me to any issues at this point.
No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Arnett?
Yes, thank you. And I do really want to hear from Kaka, because I'm very interested in knowing how these machinations would impact the whole CNI development. But before we get there, I'm on line 19. The Resilience Authority shall use the property for purposes consistent with its mission, environmental challenges, climate resilience, and infrastructure. We're talking about an arm's length, which I think this is wink, wink, nod, nod. This seems hardly arm's length. But should we not at least be more specific that we're expecting them to get a grant and do X amount of remediation? We still don't even know what the amount of remediation is. Do we even know what the amount of the grant is? Do we know what we're asking for? But shouldn't we be more explicit that this arm's length sale is so they will go get a grant and accomplish X amount of remediation?
I did look into that question. We were talking with the granting organization as well as the Resilience Authority, and the advice that came down to me was that it was not required in the deed. Doesn't mean it can't be put in, but when I was trying to sort of coordinate this draft ordinance and the deed, that it was not a requirement to put in there. Now, if you decide that for your comfort level, you need something more express, I would defer to you. We just wanted to put in that's from the Resilience Authority does need language in there that it says it's going to be consistent with its mission. So we included that language.
The other point, there's still a lot of other points, but I like the 7 years, where I think maybe it should be up to 7 years, but it does seem to me that we ought to know what the buyback price is, even though this is arm's length. I mean, this is kind of pantomime here, but
You could definitely change it up to 7 years. I would agree with the city attorney that putting in a buyback price is probably not the best path forward.
so let's just put it in personal terms. You own a home. It needs a lot of work, and you find somebody that you can sell your house to for $1. They're going to do a whole bunch of work, and then you're going to just trust at the end that they'll sell it back to you,
Well,
and they will sell it
we're
back to you
not
for $1.
selling it to a private developer. We're selling it to a quasi-governmental entity that was set up for these specific types of projects.
We've sold it. We no longer have control. Otherwise-
There is an element of trust here, but we're not selling it to a private developer. We're not selling it to even a private organization. This is a quasi-governmental entity whose whole purpose is to help local jurisdictions, specifically Anne Arundel County and the city of Annapolis, with environmental issues. So,
And might I add to, Mr. Councilman, that you can't do anything with the property now. It's not, nothing's going to happen on that property.
This is another better to have $4 million
Because it's going to be,
But-
if it doesn't get remediated,
all right.
no one can do anything on it except put more environmental hazards on the property, dump it, use it as a dumping ground, which you don't want to do, but you're not getting any value from the property now. And the hope is that the transaction will secure the future of the property as property that can be used for other things, for the benefit of the citizens who the Resiliency Authority was created to assist, the population at large.
Is there?
I'm speculating a little bit, I'm sorry. But I'm pretty sure the Resilience Authority's own bylaws do not allow them to turn a profit. If they give it back to us, they're not allowed to make any revenue. They have restrictions against that. So they're going to have to sell it back to us at the cost that they bought it
It
from.
would have been nice to have someone, a representative from the Resilience Authority here. We've asked
The council will have an opportunity.
We've asked for them to be here. And we hear, suggestions about their actions, but it really would be nice to have someone from the authority here to tell us definitively what their plan is.
And I think we still do have time to get there. But again, on lines 19 and 20, wouldn't it make this document stronger to say, rather than saying consistent with their mission, can't we include somehow what their mission is?
well, that is their mission. I mean, unless you're looking for something extremely more detailed, but that generally is their mission statement.
And Mike Lyles, again, the Resilience Authority folks can be at the meeting, at the council meeting, to answer any additional questions. So we could ask them to come.
Yeah, and as far as the nonprofit, suppose they get a grant and they spend $4 million, that is something, where is it that says they can't sell us back for $1 plus the $4 million? I mean, I just don't know their setup in any way that would tell us that they can't expect to net out to zero. Maybe you're saying that the grant doesn't cost them any money and there's no processing fees or anything else they have to pay, but it is costing them more than $1. Or is it not? I mean, we don't know. Anyway, to me, the really relevant thing is how does 7 years affect the CNI project?
Ms. Maddox Evans, would you speak to any part of this?
Sure. Well, very complicated issues, obviously, to sort through with regards to Spa Road. But, and thank you for asking me to appear before you today. So I will speak to primarily our conceptual plans for the use of the land post remediation. So provided all of these matters are clear and we are able to build both commercial and residential space on Spa Road, these are some of the plans we are now considering. Nothing's etched in stone, but these are conceptual plans that we have been discussing with the city's planning and zoning department and the comprehensive planning department, and in partnership with our developers, which we have entered into, we have selected a developer for our CNI project, which is Genesis and Monognock. They're out of New York, are very well experienced in large scale development projects such as CNI. And so what we all have envisioned with regards to Spa Road is with regards to the east side. So I'll start with the east side versus the west side. So things that we have are thinking that are possible for these sites is up to 16,000 in general square foot space of ground floor office space. That may be possible for HACA, as HACA has to move its main offices from its current location to a new location. So that's a possibility for a new headquarter space. Another 16,000 square foot worth of space for city offices. Any offices that the city considers that needs to be moved to that space. 112 units of multifamily, potentially mixed income rental space that would sit atop of the HACA and or city offices with green amenity terraces and of course use of air rights and other and over existing utility easements that are currently there. Green residential amenity terrace space above the office spaces, a potential for an amphitheater and stage shell at green bottom of the site for public use and for residential use. 2 levels of underbuilding parking benched within the slope side of up to 224 parking spaces. On the west side of Spa Road,
200 what?
224 parking spaces. That's east side. On the west side of Spa Road, 128 units of multifamily, potentially mixed income rental or condos sites with will sit on top of parking spaces, of course, with the use of air rights and existing utility easements that will be contemplated. Green residential amenity terrace space above offices, 2 levels of under building parking of up to, which will be benched into the slope side of the site of up to 210 parking spaces. All of this is conceptual. All of this is possible from what our architects and engineers have determined on preliminary review, all of which I have stated is subject to environmental constraints, which will be revealed during the remediation process. So we will be able to know more specifically once remediation is engaged, and definitely, obviously, once completed, what we would be actually able to do. And so with regards to our CNI process, we include the progress of remediation in our CNI application. So we intend to, starting actually, once we finalize the MOU with the developer, begin late this summer CNI application work, which will take about a year. We anticipate applying for CNI implementation grant, hopefully next summer, fall, whenever the NOFA indicates application time, which is not published right now. But we know it'll be sometime mid 2026 or later. So we have already are already engaging the city staff and our developers to begin the efforts of planning for this application, which will include the city's remediation efforts of the Spa Road space. When we apply for CNI, we also indicate that our plans, our conceptual plans, are contingent upon remediation environmental outcomes. And so, but what HUD likes to see is the plan in place. HUD also knows that plans are subject to change with regards to unforeseens that we experience as we are executing all of our efforts. So that's our plan. We're beginning that application process in earnest this fall. So what we would be needing is, for example, copies of a showing of proof that the city has, for example, applied for grant funding to assist in remediation, that city council has continued to approve efforts that lend towards those efforts. So this particular site can continue to be considered as a potential viable inclusion in the overall CNI plan. As with all plans, we know that what our aspirations are may not be exactly aligned with what the actual outcome is. So we have always planned to pivot depending on outcomes with regards to the feasibility of the site, whether we can include it at all based on the outcome of the remediation efforts, or partially. And so that is where we are right now. So we have a lot of exciting ideas and possibilities that are that we are all considering as partners. So this effort, once we apply for the CNI grant, it will be in partnership with the developer and the city. So HUD views this development project as having actually three development entities: the city of Annapolis, HACA, and our development partner when we go to apply for this effort. And all of our entities have various roles with regards to the overall project.
So by pivot, you mean if this doesn't work out, you stay on the current footprint of the current campus?
Correct. Or if there are other sites that we become aware of in the course of investigating what other land possibilities or land use possibilities we have to dedicate towards this effort, whether they're possibilities that the city knows about, or the county, or HACA is able to investigate. So we have always known that it may not be viable, even with remediation efforts underway. So So all that to say, it's not going to stop our efforts, regardless of the outcome.
So one of the potential strategies you could have is to think about redeveloping the current footprint, maybe also simultaneously looking at other spaces, but then as a second phase, potentially expanding here. Would that mean, because one of the things about the CNI is having the mixed income levels is an important ingredient there.
Yeah.
You could do that and have a successful redevelopment on your current footprint, but the desire is to expand from 356 to 752 or whatever the number is.
Yes. So we anticipate there will be at least 4 phases in this overall project. And so we are not clear at this point whether the Spa Road redevelopment aspect will be incorporated in the first phase or the second phase. Or it could be the second phase or the third phase. And so that depends on the remediation outcome, which we don't know at this time, but we are including it. It just depends on when we can include it for the purposes of which I spoke about earlier.
Thank you, Ms. Evans, for providing some information I know I didn't have with the specifics.
I couldn't write fast enough.
Maybe you will send that information to us. That information is important after the remediation, and that's what we need to get back to right now. So thank you very much. And if you could share those statistics. I know Ms. Leonard has to leave, so I'm going to ask if anyone has any legal questions to ask her before she has to leave the committee meeting. Alderman Schnellmeyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It seems that the fear of having to pay more than of after the remediation is done, of us getting trying to think of an appropriate term to use at a government setting, worked over, I guess, by our partner, seems to be a concern. Do you think it's necessary to put into language in this sale that it gets sold back to us within 7 years time frame, or are we covered in the actual negotiations on this front? Or
I don't mind including the reverter that if it doesn't happen up to 7 years, that they can give it back. But I just don't think if you're going to truly keep it at arm's length, you can't specify the actual specifics of the sale back. But I don't mind including the reverter that says if nothing happens within this time frame, then you're going to give it back to us.
okay,
And generally with reverter language, you couldn't get, if they're not using it, you can't get worked over. But I think if the Resilience Authority comes to speak with you, they can probably address a lot of this. They do have that us in the county signed up with them, very strict, bylaws and governing documents. They can't operate as a private developer. They have very specific guidelines that they have to stay within, which I would hope when they are able to share those will provide a level of trust that they are a partner.
I appreciate that. My work with some of the folks on the Resiliency Authority, I know them to be folks of character, but I also understand us wanting to be cautious because this is our property and we want to make sure that we protect our interests as a city as well. But when we get the opportunity to speak with them, we can collaborate and find some good ways to make sure we're all on the same page. So that's my pitch, Madam Chair.
Alderman, are you interested in making the amendment on page 2, line 24, to say up to, does the property shall revert to the city in up to 7 years from the date of transfer?
Ms. Leonard, do you find that language necessary, or is that clarifying on your belief? Would it make my colleagues comfortable on that?
Deeds do have reverter clauses. For instance, we we own property that has reverter clauses in it. For instance, if we stop doing a certain thing, then it has to revert back. So reverter clauses and deeds don't trouble me in particular. If you don't want to specify it here, I think the Resilience Authority is comfortable with the reverter clause already, but that's your discretion.
You're suggesting that we don't need the 7 years, and it simply says
You can
revert
put the
to the
7.
city.
You can put up to 7 years. It's fine. Like I said, there's reverter clauses in deeds is not an uncommon
Okay.
occurrence.
So I shall make a motion to put that reverter clause in the up to 7 years. I think that
Well,
makes,
it's in. It says shall revert to the city. We're talking about adding in up to 7 years. From the date of transfer.
Sure.
Alderman, is that a second?
Yep, second.
Okay. So the amendment, page 2, line 24, includes city shall revert, property shall revert to the city in up to 7 years from the date of transfer.
We have to take a look at that language just to make sure it's appropriate. It sounds a little muddled, and I want to make sure that it's
Do you have
correct.
it in front of you, Mr. Lyle?
I do not, but we
Mr.
understand your
Vogel
intent.
probably has it on his computer.
We have your intent. We'll take care of it. But I think
All right.
you meant no more than or no later than 7 years, as opposed
whatever
to,
language is appropriate and legally
yeah.
sufficient. is
We
fine
think
with
we
me.
know where you're going.
You get the gist
Yep.
of what we're
Yeah,
trying
yeah.
to. Okay. So with the law department's tweaking of it, I'll take a vote on the amendment. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lyles, and we'll look forward to that. Anything else for Ms. Leonard before she has to leave us? Thank you for rushing over here to do this so you can rush off to do something else.
Not a problem. I will also come to the Economic Matters meeting next week, which I believe this is also on the agenda for.
It is. See you Wednesday.
So if you have any follow-ups, I will be there as well.
See you Wednesday.
Thank you. Mr. Jakubiec?
Well, I just wanted to mention that Melissa has provided a fairly detailed set of conceptual plans for particularly the east side of the property that her architectural design team put together and shared with our staff this week. But as she said, these are going to be massaged and worked out because as it's contemplated now, it wouldn't really provide the amount of land and space that the city would need to accommodate its future office needs if this site were to be located or considered as a site for more municipal office space. So there's going to be a lot of collaboration between our offices before, and ultimately city approval, right, before a development scenario is crafted on that property.
Okay. I'm sorry, Alderman.
So I just want to comment that it seems to me like an awful lot of things have been put in place by the administration that we are only finding out about. And I think that some of the angst with regard to this legislation could have been eased by bringing us in on the game, what is planned and so forth. And I do have some questions about what kinds of commitments post remediation the city has already made on this, again, without our knowledge on the council. And I'd still have some legal questions about how we can surplus the property without following the state code and the city code on doing that without getting the two appraisals and following the process in the code. That I think are things we're going to have to find out more about. But my primary concern, I'm so glad you were here today, Melissa Maddox Evans, is because I think we all if the plan is to go forward and at least some portion of this property is going to be used as a part of the CNI, the 7-year time frame, I think you've put me at ease, probably not too far away from your time frame to reality either. And that's good to know. So we didn't want to have an impact on that.
Okay, Mr. Dinner, is there something you'd like to add from Central Services perspective?
Nothing additional from my standpoint. Thank you. Ashley Leonard delivered all of our talking points.
Okay, thank you.
For down the road, when we have the reverter, assuming that happens, what does that mean in terms of having city property with housing authority buildings on it? And are there some legal transfers or things that need to go? Who owns the Harbor House, Eastport Terrace, and Robinwood properties now? Is that owned by the housing authority?
Those current sites, Robinwood, Bloomsbury Square, Eastport Terrace, and Harbor House, are owned by the housing authority. However, when we redevelop sites, the ownership structure changes. The new, what we would call partnership sites, are not owned solely by the housing authority. They are owned by a legal entity, a partnership.
The public-private partners for redevelopment.
Correct. And so in which the, depending on how the deal is structured, so for our current deals, for example, our development partner is the majority owner of the property. The housing authority still owns the land of projects that we have, but we don't own the buildings that are on the land or the structures. For an arrangement with regards to Spa Road, the actual arrangement, which would not be between necessarily the actual housing authority as an entity, but it would be between the partnership that is created with the developer and the housing authority and the city. But the essential deal will be between the city and the developer because the land is not already ours.
Right.
And so, and there will be different contemplations depending on the use of the land. For example, if there's home ownership contemplated, there would be, fee simple transactions to contemplate. For commercial use in space, there are several legal schemes that would be anticipated in a transaction of this nature. But the housing authority would not be the majority owner, have a majority interest in this particular aspect of the redevelopment project. We would for the land that we have and we own right now. But not for Spa Road.
As an aside, the public-private partnerships you're already in are 20-year partnerships. You have right of first refusal.
Correct.
What if all those properties come back?
Correct.
To the housing authority?
And the city would probably contemplate the same as it's doing its transaction.
Right.
And so there are several legal considerations that go into changing the use and also ensuring that affordability restrictions stay and run with the land. Which will also have to be incorporated in your new legal documents that are drafted as you're transferring and or long-term leasing the land to the development partner.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I was asking if there was someone else who wanted to speak. Mr. Dales? Okay. So colleagues, where are we? Alderman Schnellmeyer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I personally am comfortable with making a motion to support this as amended.
We do have to add another amendment. Mr. Lyles, maybe we don't have to. You can just fix the fact that there's no dollar amount.
Oh, goodness, that actually.
That's a typo. We'll fix it. There has to be a dollar amount.
Okay. In page 2, line 30. So Alderman Schnellmeyer, are you making a motion?
So move to give a favorable recommendation as amended.
Is there a second?
I guess I'm uncomfortable doing that without having heard public testimony, which is the normal process. We hear that before we opine on legislation. I also am trying to figure out what the time track is. Economic Matters is not hearing it till next week. Environmental Matters seemingly is postponing it till September, which I suspect is going to cause some angst in terms of timeline. And we had also talked yesterday about having a joint council committee
session.
meeting.
A work session.
So I feel like there's this rush, but not clear to me that we have all of the information like the CNI plan. I would like to see the documents that set out the mission for the resiliency commission authority and those sorts of things. So I am not comfortable moving forward with this, but I worry that what that really is going to require, and in fact, I think aren't we already thinking about having another rules committee meeting on the 23rd?
I think it's the 17th. Or the 23rd is another
Right.
rules committee.
So I guess I would look to the administration for an answer. We're not going to get economic matters until next week. Who knows when we're going to get environmental matters? Who knows whether we're going to have a joint session? But if we postpone till the 23rd, that is legally set, right, Galen? The 23rd is set as the next meeting?
Yes.
I guess my preference would be to wait until July 22nd meeting to defer this to that point. But I'm only one of three.
Well, I was prepared to move this forward with the understanding that we hadn't heard from the public and with the contingency that if we didn't hear anything new or objectionable from the community, we could make our position known. But as you've said, it's not going to go forward with the full council without.
Yeah, Monday's
Two
just a
committees.
public hearing. There's no
Right.
legislative action.
Right. So, Alderman Schnellmeyer, I'm comfortable not moving this forward today. I was prepared to give it a second, but if we want to hear, I know I would like to hear from the Resiliency Authority. In all honesty, we can move the amendment, but I'm not, we've already moved the amendment. But I would prefer waiting until we hear from the other end. So if you're comfortable withdrawing your motion, because it didn't get a second.
It did
Yes.
not.
Okay.
But another question, when is the next council meeting? Because I think what the
Monday,
administration...
But
No,
after
not,
that,
I mean, the
until
next one in
September.
July. So if we have our meeting on the 23rd,
It'll
is
still
that,
be September before it.
isn't there another meeting in July?
So
I don't think-
Ms. Jackson is saying that the second meeting is going to be on the 28th.
28th?
The
Yeah,
28th.
that's what I thought.
Oh, okay. So
So
there.
So our
and-
meeting would occur, your meeting would occur for environmental matters all before
our
we'll
date.
have the public hearing done. We've had first reader, we'll have had public hearing, we'll have had committee member meetings. So presumably, second reader could occur on the 28th of July, which I'm looking to Burr and Chris and everybody. If it gets passed on second reader, is that getting us into whatever the Resiliency Authority needs to go ahead with their grant application?
I'm going to venture into the art of legislation, an area that you're gifted at and I'm not. But I'm going to just suggest that Alderwoman Finlayson's initial instinct may be the correct one here, given what's at stake on this property. And if you could provide appropriate caveats to your approval related to the public hearing coming up, your approval today would set a model and standard for what we need from the other subcommittees or other standing committees. There is a sense of urgency attached to this. Millions of dollars are at stake. It's tied to the CNI project, and these things have to come together. And given the timing and the August recess, the end of the legislative life of this council, we're asking that you consider approving it today.
And I'm very comfortable with it.
So it is not up for, it cannot be approved on Monday's meeting.
Correct.
It's only up for a public hearing. So it can't come up for a second vote until the July 28th meeting.
I think that's what he's referring to.
Yeah,
Which is only 2 weeks away. And
Right.
right.
we have other subcommittees to work with too. And when there's a question mark over the Rules Committee, the most respected committee, that sets back, in my experience, the other committees in their work.
So if we give it a favorable recommendation as amended today, then you're suggesting that that sends a message to the other committees that we have heard.
And you're sending a message that you would like the Resiliency Authority to speak to the full council so we can make sure that they're here and present. And I think that would be the most advantaged use of their time. And you want information on the CNI project and the Resiliency Authority documents, which we could provide to everybody at once based on your recommendation.
And I think we need to focus on the fact that we keep talking CNI, and while we know we can't pretend that's not what's waiting for this legislation, but that's not what this legislation is about. This legislation really is about us giving the property over to the Resilience Authority so they can get some money to fix the problem. And then CNI will kick in because then we'll be ready for that phase. So just concentrating on giving them the authority to seek out grant funding to fix the problem. That's what this legislation is about. So Alderman Schellenmeyer had made a motion. We've made one amendment. Can we at least go forward with the understanding that this is about the Resilience Authority getting money? You know, that's really what it's about. I don't want to say forget CNI, but CNI isn't playing a role at this point. It's crucial, no question. We don't want to pretend that it's not on the back burner waiting, but we can't get there until we finish this step. Alderman?
Well, I've stated my feelings. I feel rushed. I feel like the proper process is to have the public hearing. My suspicion is there's not going to be any testimony at the public hearing on Monday, but we still do have time before the second reader vote on the 28th to take this up again, but I'm only one of three.
When's our next proposed meeting, Ms. Jackson? On the 23rd. I'm sorry.
Well, we're going to have to work on environmental matters, and two of the three members are here, and I think we may, because of the grant, the real urgency is getting this big grant. CNI is important, but that's not the urgency. So I take your thinking, Madam Chair, that this is really about turning this over to the Resiliency Authority. And I think we need to encourage our other committee, the Environmental Matters, to think about meeting again before the 28th rather than deferring till September.
That's what I was going to propose.
On the 23rd.
23rd. Okay.
I think that's a good solution, but
Okay.
I'm not going to hold up the committee vote.
So I was going to ask for a repeat of a motion, but I won't. So we still have on the 23rd, we can hear from the community, the public on Monday during public hearing, and still have an opportunity to take a position from this body. We'll seek out a joint meeting with Environmental Matters on the 23rd, so maybe we can get that group, 2/3 of whom are here, to agree to agree on the ordinance, and it'll still be ready for second reader on the 28th.
Uh-oh.
Acting City
Here's
Manager.
I can hear Matt. Good afternoon, Jackie Giles, Acting City Manager. I just have a question for clarification. Do you want the Resilience Authority to attend the Monday night meeting or one of the joint session? Because I'm communicating right now with Matt Fleming, trying to figure out what his availability is.
I think the 23rd
Yeah.
On the
would be
23rd.
the most appropriate.
Okay, what time is that meeting?
What time's it's at 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock? Okay, let me see if he can,
Mhm.
he or Gabe can be available at that time.
I'm sorry.
I'll see if Matt Fleming or Gabe Cohey can be available.
Yes, or
Okay.
someone, whomever, can represent the body.
Yes, okay. So
Yeah.
not for Monday night,
No,
just for the 23rd. Okay,
yes,
Yeah.
for a
Thank you.
committee meeting.
thank you.
Thank you.
Monday we hear from the public.
Right, Monday's public hearing. Alderman Shannemeyer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So if we do put it on to the 23rd's agenda, there's an actual,
Okay,
sorry, stutter moment. There is an additional deadline of we need to have it voted on by 3, so it can hit the 4:30 deadline to end up on the 28th agenda.
oh, it can go on the agenda without our position.
It still can go on the
It
agenda.
still can go on the agenda. Yeah, it can still go on. But we don't have a problem with getting it done in 2 hours.
I think,
I think we can do that.
well, I think with all the groundwork we got yesterday and today, I think it's very easy to see clearly. I think there's minor amendments and keeping the focus on the Resiliency Authority. I'm going to have a conversation with Alderman Savage, tell him about today or urge him to look at this meeting. I know he had a lot of other reservations, and he is the one that had different ideas for the other side, the west side of Spa Road. But getting the information that you gave us today, Ms. Maddox Evans, we're already talking about city space there. We're talking about 400 plus parking spaces. I think that is going to be very good news to Alderman Savage. So I'm very glad you came today.
Okay, so do I hear a motion to postpone action on 020
To July 23rd.
until the July 23rd meeting? And making sure that we will recall that we already have an amendment to that legislation. Is there a motion? to postpone?
I move we postpone to July 23rd.
Second? Okay, discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you very much, Ms. Evans, Mr. Kubiak, Mr. Dinner,
Ms. Leonard in absentia.
Ms. Leonard, Mr. Lyles, Mr. Vogel. I don't know who's staying around for the next piece of legislation. Alderman, are you interested in postponing action on this legislation? 0925 is our next. Expanding waterfront uses in R4 general residence
All right, so-
district.
I apologize profusely. With the help of Miss Reuter and Mr. Dales, maybe we can piece it together, but I just don't have my folder. And there were some amendments or discussions. Mr. Dales, I wasn't able to get your red line version that you had said you would share with me, but
Thank you,
if
Mr.
we
Vogel.
can,
I
if
didn't
we
say that
could
already.
postpone it till the 23rd, is that causing any angst that can go on our agenda for the 23rd as well?
I'm comfortable with that. It'll be second on the agenda.
I know, it'll be the
Okay.
tail wagging the dog.
Mm-hmm.
I
Is
just,
that
I
comfortable?
cannot find the folder.
I'm sorry, would you can't hear? I'm sorry, I did not recognize you with the hat on. You cannot come in city council chambers with the hat on. I'm just kidding.
But it's an Orioles hat.
It's a hat. I couldn't see his face. I had no clue who that was. Sorry, Mr. Dale.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just would provide a brief description of I think the intended amendment that Alderman Arnett and Terry Lomax and I have worked on together, and that I believe will be the subject of your discussion when you do take this up. There are 5 proposed uses added that are water access uses for the R4 district, and all of them would be added as permitted uses, with 3 of the 5 being permitted subject to standards. The 5 uses are boat rentals, charters, and charter services, in-water boat storage, dock slips, piers, and other facilities at which boats are berthed, on land boat storage, open areas paved or unpaved, and structures providing for on-land boat and marine equipment, storage and display, tugboat vessel towing services, fireboat, pilot boat, harbor master, and similar services, and finally, marine transportation and water taxis. The first of those 3 would all be permitted subject to standards, with the standards limiting those uses so that there wouldn't be any short-term rentals permitted, no houseboats permitted, and so that the on-land boat storage, and these are areas that are existing areas in some of the R4 properties, would not be able to be expanded. They basically just make what's currently on some of these R4 properties on the water legitimate non-conforming uses, so legal permitted uses.
So are you
So
proposing those as amendments to the alderman? What's the,
this has been discussed with the director, with the chair of the Maritime Advisory Board, and so forth, but I don't have them in amendment form because I don't have my folder. It's almost perforce. It would be a disservice to the rest of you. You can't look at these expansions to the use table, but fortunately we have the ability to put this on the agenda for the 23rd, in which I can get the amendments in proper form. So we probably would have postponed anyway because I didn't have it done. But
and we're going to get you on your iPad because you know if you had the information in your iPad. I'm
well,
just
it's
saying.
not in there. Not there. So because these
Okay.
are amendments that are not yet ready for proposal. So,
Yeah, but he would have sent them to you. But
well, he did.
They were really a product of brainstorming, and I created a red line copy of the bill, but I believe the Office of Law would probably want to create the amendment themselves. So I had just sent Alderman Arnett the red line so that he could provide it to the Office of Law.
okay.
The really encouraging thing I'll just say is this really has been discussed, I think, on 3 occasions by the Maritime Advisory Board, who have a lot of marine owners who could possibly have had some concern about this, and they did not express that. And in fact, the board made a favorable motion to approve these changes, but they haven't seen the latest, more full version of changes. So I apologize profusely, and I'm very frustrated. I have no clue where that folder is.
Uh-oh. Well, you have a few days. to find it.
Yes.
Just say it.
I'll bring it on my birthday.
Okay. So am I hearing a motion to postpone consideration of 0925?
So moved.
Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye. Okay. That exhausts our agenda. Anything else for the good of the order?
I just want to say for the good of the order, I wish we, the council, had been brought up to speed about all of these different plans. It would make us part of the team and better able to act as a team if we had known all of these different behind the scenes arrangements that are being made. I got a very urgent call today, right before coming to this meeting, somebody who watched yesterday's meeting and were flabbergasted. They had no idea that this really mammoth effort is underway. And I don't think the public is very well aware of what's being planned. I don't think the council is fully aware of what is being planned. So I really wish we could have better preparation and coordination with the administration on this thing.
Well, Alderman, and I agree with you. Maybe on first readers, we should be doing more than cursory approval. And not necessarily as a group, but individually. You know, we get these things on first reader, and then generally we don't pay much attention to them until it's time for the public hearing or the committee work. So maybe that would be, I mean, true, some things we should know well in advance, such as the sale of Spa Road. But most things on first reader, we have an opportunity to look further at what the subject is. So we can do a little bit better, and we can ask the administration to keep us in the loop. So, anything else for the good of the order? Then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Then I'll say, okay, it's moved and properly seconded. Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Thank you, everyone. And I meant to speak to Mr. Vogel. Ms. Guile, can you make reference or make motion or make a note to bring the council up to stuff? I can't talk now. Up to speed on the flooding in City Dock. Is that Mr. Vogel right there? Can you catch him? Oh, no.
Yeah.
No, he was coming down the steps.